Hello and welcome to the Let That Shift Go podcast. I'm Noel.
And I'm Lena.
And this is where we talk about the good, the bad, and all the shift in between.
We'll just talk mad shift.
Let's get into it. And on this week's episode, Merry Shiftmas. We took a little hiatus here for the Thanksgiving holiday.
Yeah.
And we learned a little bit, both individually about ourselves. Through another holiday gathering. We each attended our own separate ones, and it brought up a lot of feelings and old memories and old stories, and so we thought we'd talk about that because we also have on a quick approach the Christmas time coming.
Yeah, and while so much of it is like, oh, we get the gingerbread lattes and, we get to put up Christmas decorations. Like, that's not for everybody is like the highlight of the season. Sometimes it's really bringing up a lot of other stuff.
Yeah.
And we get to feel a lot of things very deeply. So we thought this would be a good discussion.
Yep. But before we do that, let's do these skin deep cards, see if we can get a little bit of vulnerability stirred up. You want to go first this week? Or you want me to?
Yeah, I'll go first.
All right.
I never know what's going to, okay. When were you the proudest of me?
Oh. Huh. When was I the proudest of you?
I mean, your need to really think about it.
I mean, there's plenty of times. That's why. Like, I mean, I could think of like obvious ones that were like most recently, like I watch you like bring somebody through like a breathwork thing, or like see you come out of a session with a client and just like those moments are like, oh man, like watching you light up because you, like you said, recognize a pattern or you're helping somebody in your process. So
yeah,
like I guess that's when I'm most proud. I would say that's what came first to my mind. But I was like, oh, there's something more grandiose. But I mean that's what jumped first and foremost for me. And I think it's just because it's what we're doing and it's what it's what excites me also. So.
Actually, I can remember seeing your face and I could feel it.
Oh yeah? What? Okay, tell me, when was it then?
Well, when we were doing when I did a breathwork session with someone and came out and was telling you about, just how good it felt to lead someone through that and be able to see the release for them and how I love it so much, and really to see your face light up. Yeah. I could feel that. Yeah. And part of it was like, we're going to be doing this together. Yeah. And you are stepping into this as well. And it's like,
so it's super fun together. Yeah. Okay. That makes sense. That makes sense.
I like it.
All right. My question is, who do you think has the greatest influence on our relationship?
Who do I think has the greatest influence on our relationship?
Yeah. On our relationship.
I think we have the greatest influence on our relationship. And I would say we take turns having more of an influence and not. Sometimes it's me and sometimes it's you. And I think that has been really through all the work we've been able to do on communication and being able to call each other forward.
Okay.
So sometimes you're calling me forward.
Yep.
And before I would say it's calling me out, but now I'm like, no, I know that my brother loves me. Yeah. And likes me. And, like more importantly, likes me. Yeah. And so when you are, saying that you're sharing something with me in observance or, where I'm like bullshitting myself, that I'm less likely to take offense and more like, okay. How can I feel that or see that? And I honestly feel that it's been reciprocated. So, like when I've had to say something to you, you receive it and you take it in and, you don't like assume that I'm trying to attack you or trying to from a good place, criticize. It's like, okay, how can I receive that? So I would say that it's kind of an equal thing. We take turns being an influence. I don't know so much that there's an outside person.
What about when we were younger? You think there's somebody had influence over us when our relationship when we were kids?
I think all the wrong people had influence on our relationship as kids.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
But that's, definitely no longer the case. Now we're influencing them.
Yeah, I think
we're the biggest influences on them. So,
yeah.
On our parents and, so yeah.
Yeah. Joke's on you, Jack. So this Merry Shiftmas,
Ooh, yeah.
My name being Noel, the appropriately, I was born December 15th, 10 days early from Christmas. I was a preemie. So, but they still named me Noel. And every year, this time of year it's always been hard for me for many reasons. And, and I think we've talked about it a little bit in the past of like, being my birthday being near Christmas and getting the same gift for birthday and Christmas and all those little things and feeling competitive with the other siblings and all those things. So, but really when it comes to now what we're talking about is the gatherings and as adults even, the dynamics of having families. And, some of it's the feeling of like, I've watched from a distance, like your family and see how like your children have their own relationships and also have to spend these holidays with other their spouses' families.
Yeah.
And so that, in some way is a competition. And so for some reason that became like this repeating concept with the holidays was like this, everything's a freaking competition.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we're constantly like running from one place to another. And did we spend more time with your family or my family? And I know for Armando and I, that was a big deal when we were raising our kids, is the holidays became like a time of like arguments.
Yeah.
And because it's like, well, how long we're going to your parents first, but then don't eat too much because we're going to go to mine. And then, we spent more time there and, things like that. And especially when you have kids trying to pack them up and get from one place to another, but then you got to be back before Santa is supposed to be like, all,
Yeah.
And then you have to get your house ready so that you can come home and open gifts. And like, it just became so stressful that it was not really something that we looked forward to as being parents. Hopefully our kids didn't feel it, but I'm sure they did because they can feel everything. But it became like, oh my gosh, here we go.
Yeah.
And there's so much expectation.
Yeah.
So, a lot of those arguments were around the expectation of what our families had for us and how long we were going to be there and, all of that. This is not even taking into account the dynamics that happen when you're at family gatherings.
Yeah.
But it's just like, just strictly getting from one spot to another, meeting everybody.
And also you have families that celebrate things different, like some families celebrate New Year's Eve and you all like, parts of my family would open up on midnight. You would all the kids got to open up one gift.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Or from each of the other uncles and aunties kind of a thing. Right. So, but then the next day we would open at our own homes, open our presents.
Yeah.
But where we spent Christmas Eve and where we spent Christmas Day was kind of a thing. And so sometimes I know even with Armando's family, like you guys would be up celebrating Christmas Eve with his family kind of a thing sometimes. So.
Yeah. I mean, it worked out in some ways because, in the Mexican household or culture, like the Christmas Eve is a bigger thing, or Three Kings, but that was for different reasons. But we tried to work it out, but it still would have just this level of stress that kind of negates really what maybe you expect that you should be feeling.
Yeah.
And so there's like this expectation versus reality. It's like, oh, I want to be able to spend time with everyone. But the reality is you can't.
Yeah.
And when you try to, you end up, kind of in, it can be in an argument, a stressful situation. And then there's just this extra added expectation of what you're trying to accomplish and what you're actually able to accomplish. So I know like now, our kids are all grown and they have spouses or significant others. And one of the things that we both said to each other is like, we're not doing that to our kids.
Yeah.
Right. We just like, we know that you want to spend time with your other family and that's okay. And we're not going to judge it. So what if we just set a time, like right after Thanksgiving, we go away for a week or five days or whatever, go away together. All of us get together. We do not exchange gifts anymore because none of us needs anything.
Yeah.
But instead you use that money to travel to get to the place. And we usually try to rent a house. Like as the parents, that's our gift to the kids. And then each of them has to get themselves there.
Yeah.
And it's a lot easier. Well, I think it's easier
Yeah, but there could be some other opinions there.
I realize this year that while it's a great idea,
for you,
for us,
empty nester,
and the kids always, they seem to have loved it. We've gone to like Cabo, or we go to.
Oh, I'm sure it's a good time. Yeah.
And we get this quality time, and it's making memories, right?
Yeah.
And it was a friend of mine who told me that she did this with her family, and I was like, that sounds amazing, because the best thing about the holidays is really getting together, if you like each other.
Yeah.
And having meals together and just waking up, and because how often do you get to do that with your adult children?
Yeah.
And it's been awesome. But then I realized, like now my kids, have kids, and it's hard for them probably to travel. So I also realized like we may have just added an extra amount of stress to the holidays that they didn't need if they were just traveling, or driving out to see us one day.
Yeah.
But I guess it's just bringing awareness to how stressful things can be, and really taking into consideration as a parent of adult children that it's not easy for your kids to get from place to place and be able to satisfy what you want
and what other families expect, because there's also like family dynamics. That's another big part of it.
It's like they're also trying to satisfy their spouse's family and you. So I mean, as the adult parent, is to maybe just for a second be mindful of how stressful that can be for them. And just give a little grace. So if they say they can't come, don't take it personal.
Yeah, but on all these things, there's stresses on that, like with unintended, with the kids having kids to bring. But then there's also the people that also that planned everything and put all the stuff together, and you feel like, well, I'm doing all this work and then nobody ever responds, and like I've had these where we set up a lot of trips, and it's so hard to get adults to kind of get together and confirm hotels and flights and all these things. Like that is a massive undertaking, right? So like a lot, there's love lost there too, because somebody feels like there's some inequity. Right. So maybe there's some inequity, like, oh, you don't understand how hard it is for me. Well, you don't understand how it is for me to put all this stuff together. Well, you don't know how hard it is for me to make this money or get the time off. Like everybody's got their own shit,
their own story that they're in.
Yeah. And none of us, we're all thinking, well, we all have this expectation that we're all going to be in full smiles and we're all going to enjoy each other's company. And that's the hard part, because when we arrive, it's not always that.
No.
Yeah.
No.
But you have the expectation.
Then you're disappointed.
Yeah, the
expectation is the root of all disappointment.
Yeah.
So I think part of wanting to do this was really just to say, like, have a sense of awareness of what is happening for other people. We can't just be in our movie theater.
Yeah.
And thinking, I did all this. Why can't you just
leave some room for different beliefs.
Just some room, some grace.
Yep.
And if your adult children say they can't come, be okay with that and don't take it personal.
Or if your mom says she can't come.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, in my case, that was something that stood up. It was I didn't understand. I was like, well, I don't really understand how this can happen. You don't want to spend Thanksgiving with me. And it was brought up an old childhood wound, like you're, abandoning me or something like that. So yeah, but the conversations have to happen.
Yeah. I mean, maybe it's an opportunity to have a conversation.
Yeah.
And just acknowledge that it's not easy for everyone. So,
well, yeah, I mean,
and there's an amount of stress that goes on all sides.
Well, I think also in almost every family, probably in every family, I should say, like there's unspoken things or things that need to be spoken. And we've yet to have these conversations.
Yeah.
And even between mom and I, like there has been a conversation that I've been needing to have with her for a long time, but for my own reasons of whatever I feel like I need to protect her from my thoughts or whatever, I haven't been able to clearly voice those. So that didn't lead to like a very good situation when it comes to getting triggered around the holidays, because some things like that can pop out.
Yeah. And it's not the place sometimes.
And it's not the place. Yeah. Because, oh shit, here comes this, childhood wound, and I didn't know what the hell it was.
Yeah.
Right. But, afterwards now, upon reflection, I understand that I have to be conscientious about other people's viewpoints, other people's perspective, because they're not seeing, my movie, I'm not seeing theirs and all that,
Yeah.
And there was, situations where I just wasn't aware of.
Yeah.
And I didn't understand how I was putting my family in a uniquely difficult position to choose also. Mm-hmm. So.
Do you want to talk more about that?
I guess, like what?
Yeah. Like, well, what was that?
Well, because, there's life things that happen where I guess, moms are going to want to protect their sons. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And if your mom feels for some reason like somebody is hurting you, then you may not be in the best position as the mom to have as much grace or room for wiggle room, mm-hmm. right? And so I'm expecting like everybody just supports Noel and all this stuff, and yeah, we want to let's go to Thanksgiving. Well, my mom didn't feel comfortable because she doesn't feel comfortable because we haven't had the conversations. She has something to tell me, and I have something that I needed to tell her. Both of them, enmeshed together, and there's deep reasons for those things, but we never had the conversation. So because of it, I didn't know why she felt uncomfortable, and she didn't know why I felt, uncomfortable. So not having the conversations and then having these holidays come around.
And instead of her saying, this is what is making me uncomfortable. So not having a difficult conversation and then skirting
it,
being together, then just leaves everyone in a position to assume what's happening.
Yeah.
And then what happens when we assume.
Yeah. And then I'm like, well, now I got to explain why you're not coming and all these things. And it's like, well, but that doesn't really matter. You know what I mean? The biggest, when everything came down to it, like nobody really knew anything was going on, but just me and my mom, really, me and mom. So, but it was a big falling out just because we didn't have the conversations and we didn't have good communication.
Yeah.
And she didn't feel safe enough to tell me, and, she didn't think I could handle it. And I didn't feel safe enough, or I don't think she could handle what I need to tell her.
So we just assume what other people are safe with handling and then don't have a conversation.
Yeah. And I think
makes it worse.
I think that's, if I had to like look back and say, what was the lesson from this most recent holiday season, was like, listen, part of what we're walking here is walking in authenticity and walking in awareness, and basically, making people aware of how we feel in the moment. And I know everybody, you don't have to be all into your feelings all the time, but I think holding things back and not saying things that you think you're trying to protect somebody, in some ways, I think they sense and they feel like you distrust them in some way. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Or there's some loss there.
They're picking up on it, and then they're going to assume what the story is.
And I was doing it with mom, and she was doing it with me. And once we figured out what the real story was, it was like, well, here we go. I guess we just had this conversation. That would have been much easier.
Yeah.
But instead, we kind of, try to deflect. And so,
it's like the family conflicts, pre-existing family conflicts.
Yeah. I mean,
and it can just get exacerbated by being in a holiday situation, because now everybody's trying to be on their best behavior, but there's some unspoken stuff that is not happening. So what happened there?
But there's an expectation at the same time for the holidays to heal all, and everybody comes together and looks past their shit for the holidays.
You're in your close quarters.
But then that's the time when it's most stirred up. Because I mean, listen, seasonal depression, I think, is a real thing for me, right? So this time of year, it brings up, I don't know, a lot of, for myself, I can't speak for everybody else, but it brings up a lot of self-reflection. My birthday is around this time of year. It's the end of the year. We're going to go into 2024. Like, all these things make me reflect back, like, what am I doing in my life right now, and all those things. And I think for those reasons, every year I reassess, like, where am I at?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Well, yeah. And the other thing that was coming up with the holidays is really thinking about, like, if you're from a divorced family too.
Yeah.
That often you had to go from mom and dad's house, and kind of like that same thing with, being parents and going from house to house. That probably brought up a lot of things for me just from being in a divorced family.
Yeah.
And having to go to mom's house and dad's house. And it kind of brought up that same dynamic of never just being able to relax in one space.
Yeah.
So even, coming from a divorced family, having to be one way with mom and one way with dad and trying to satisfy everyone, that's a whole nother level of stress. And as an adult, you may not even be aware that that's an underlying story that has run in your system. So here comes the holidays and you're like, I don't know why I feel so anxious.
Yeah.
Well, if you feel anxious like that for however many years or decades, you may not be aware that that is also bringing up, this time of year is bringing up a lot of old stuff, or the other thing is like really talking about like statistically, one of the main things of stress during the holidays is financial.
Yeah.
There's an expectation you want to give these gifts and where are you going to come up with the money for that? And, or it brings up what you didn't have growing up. So and then there's a lot of comparison for what other families are doing. So it's like this multitude, like this melting pot of things that can be very stressful.
Yeah.
And a lot of times you're not comfortable really saying, this is the thing. It's like it's bringing up stuff about money. It's bringing up stuff about family dynamics.
Yeah.
About stress, about expectation. So, while, it's a great time of year for getting together, if you can step away from all the commercialism.
Yeah.
But it also is a time, like being aware that it is a time that it brings up a lot of possible triggers for people of pain from the past.
Yep.
Or present time, right? So because right now you think about mile markers.
Yeah.
So with a lot of people going through the holidays are a really hard time for people going through firsts.
Yeah.
Whether it's been through a breakup, the loss of a loved one.
Oh, first Christmas without this person.
Yeah. Yep. And it's like we make that a whole thing in our minds.
Yeah.
Because, you could just be at the gathering, right? And be in the moment. But if you're in your own kind of story about this is the first time I'm going to be here without them.
Yeah.
Or the first time that I'm going to fill in the blank.
Yeah.
So it becomes mile marker, and we make it even more heavy on top of all the other things of what the holidays bring.
Yep.
It's a great time, but not for everyone.
Yeah.
And I think just being aware of that and really bringing some compassion to the people around you and considering that is something to think about.
Yeah.
Don't assume that everything is great or that everything's bad, but just like be aware and ask.
Yeah, and it's not a competition.
No, it's not a competition.
That was one of the bigger things, is like the competition part, and in having the compassion for the other people, and that there's a possibility that there's a different perspective involved. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, that's kind of the name of the game, and everything is, awareness, perspective.
Yeah.
And just really being considerate of what other people might be going through. And if you see someone that's just like, whoa, you're really on edge, you can feel it and sense it, is just to say, hey, like, how's it going? What can I do to help? Or
yeah. So what would you say are things that you would do now, like retrospectively, like how might you prepared yourself better for like this most recent Thanksgiving holiday? Like what do you think that you could have done now, looking back, going, okay, some things came up and were a little bit difficult for me. So like, but how do you think that you could prepare yourself or give yourself just a little bit, a tool or something that you could do, or maybe it's something that you did do? Like what is it?
I would say is just to like ask and acknowledge, like to just check in with people and see like, hey, how is this for you? Does that, I don't want to add stress, to anyone.
Yeah.
During the holidays. So it's just really kind of relaxing a little bit, letting things go awry and being okay with it. Like it doesn't need to all meet the expectation of how you saw it going most beautifully. It's just be like, it's okay. Like it's a holidays, but doesn't need to meet some kind of fantasy expectation of what the holiday should look like.
But a lot of times we find ourselves trying to protect other people or situations from happening. Like, oh, well, I'm going to go fix this and I'm going to make this all perfect.
Yeah, so I think really it's just communication.
Yeah.
Is just being able to communicate and ask and be aware of other people's experience in the situation is kind of the main thing.
Well, let's just say you're in the situation. Let's just say like something goes off at like a Thanksgiving, like, like an awkward situation happens during Thanksgiving. What's the most appropriate thing to happen in that moment? How do you deal? What's the best way to handle the conflict?
Take a breath, and try to step into the observer mode of what's going on, and really noticing in your body, like, ooh, what's happening for me right now?
Because I did this actually, because I had a moment during this holiday where it was like a peak of tension that happened, and Sean, brother-in-law came up and just kind of came up to me with 100% love.
Mm-hmm.
And was just like, hey, everything's going to be okay.
Mm-hmm.
And let's just, let's look at this with love. And I was like,
oh, I like that.
Yeah. And so then I was like, he's like, I know. And wasn't trying to tell me anything like, you don't feel this, just.
Yeah.
And then I was like, he's regulating with me right now.
Yeah.
And so I went, oh gosh, my little brother is regulating me right in this moment. So I said, okay, I'm going to step outside. So I stepped outside and kind of just, and, ran into, Adrian was out there. And so we just had a few words and we were talking, and it was just like, I just needed to breathe a little bit and come back to myself. And it was like, oh, this isn't about this moment right now.
No, it's not.
No. And it's about something totally different.
Yeah. You know what? I want to stop you right there.
Why?
And really, really just to, because that's so important. What you just said is that it's not about this moment right now.
Yeah.
It could be about something totally different, but it's bringing something up in me.
Yeah.
And what I really think is like, during this holiday time when we're together and we have an expectation of how things should be, and maybe not aware of some of the pains that we might be carrying or some of the stresses that we're carrying, is to just be able to pause with that and notice and say that same thing to yourself. Like, it is not really about the thing that is happening right now. Or like,
it wasn't.
Uncle so-and-so comes and says something to you about how you're not married yet.
Yeah.
It's like, is that the thing that I'm most mad about? Or is it that it's bringing up something in me about like, why am I not with a partner, or whatever the story is, right? And really being able to take a breath. And like you said, just kind of go outside for a little bit, or just step away and just feel into what's happening and not go into a reaction, like maybe be able to choose a response.
Yeah. Cause I was in that moment, I was able to kind of pull it back a little bit and realize that I still was processing the stuff that was going on with Mom, and we hadn't had the conversation yet. We've since had the conversation after Thanksgiving, but before that we had not had the conversation. So there were some mixed words, and I had all kinds of tension on me during Thanksgiving dinner. Because she wasn't there, kind of a thing, you know what I mean? And then it was like, oh, nobody else in the room knew that was going on in me. But that's the thing. There's so many people walking around at a Thanksgiving dinner that you have no clue what is going on inside of them. And for me in that moment, like most people will say, oh, Noel's doing all this and he's walking the woo now and he's happy. But that doesn't mean I don't have tough moments. Yeah. And so in that moment, I was having a pretty tough one. And I was feeling like the expectation of like, this is Thanksgiving. It's got to be perfect and all these things. And it wasn't, because somebody's not here, kind of a thing. And so that played into like amplifying my story, and something so little I sparked into be something that was so big for really no reason. Really just, I wanted to be seen. I wanted to be heard. I wanted to know everybody else to know how hard it was for me that day to get everything right. I felt like everything was on me. Yeah. You know what I mean? Yeah. And so that's what I was doing in that moment. And I recognized that once I stepped outside. It was like,
So just take a second.
Yeah.
And observe what's happening for me. You know, and like, and what's,
I mean, another situation could be, had Sean not been there, he could have been like, all right, come on guys, let's not do that here, or something like that. But that wasn't the case. So when I asked like, what should you do in that moment? That was the thing. It just came in calm.
Come with love.
He didn't raise to our level. Yeah. He came down at a normal level and just stayed with calm and said, hey.
Regulated.
Yeah, regulated, totally calm. All that can do is bring you, I mean, for me, that's what it just brought me right to him. It was almost like a meditation. It was like, slowly tune into my voice.
Go regulate.
And we're going to calmly take a deep breath in through your nose. This is what it was to me. It was like, boom. It just, it triggered like that. So I think in those cases, like at least having one adult in the room is the most important thing.
Like adult, not just over 18.
Yeah. I mean, and Sean was one of the youngest adults in the room, and he was the one who did it. Right. Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, I thought that was such a powerful moment that I had something to learn from. So it was like, while this was such a stressful holiday, I think overall the lessons that I learned, it's like, oh, here's another I mean, one thing I think something that I brought away was like, I need to like stop putting off the conversations that I need to have because here we are in another year. And not only am I feeling the 2024 is coming and I still haven't had this conversation, but now I feel even more stressed to do it.
More pressure.
And here it is right before the holidays. Check it out. Merry Shiftmas isn't the time to have these conversations. Really. I mean, I could have had them at my, before it became a yell, I could have had it at a whisper when I was thinking about it months ago.
Yeah.
So,
or if you're listening to this now, have it tomorrow.
Oh, before Christmas?
Yeah, don't wait till Christmas. Be like, you know what? I got to tell you something. It's like, it may not be the best time because now you have an audience.
Yeah, we'll feel into it.
And it changes the dynamic.
Yeah.
But if you know that there's some difficult conversations to have, maybe now is the time to be able to do so in a neutral place.
At least with yourself, though. Maybe if you're not going to have the conversation, maybe you don't feel safe enough to have the conversation with the other people. True. But you should at least do some writing on it or whatever. Have the conversation with yourself. Like, what is this? What is this memory? Why am I feeling so triggered right now? All these things. And once you get to a place where you can pull back that proverbial onion and get back to the core of why you're angry right now, then nurture that thing.
Yeah.
And then go talk to the other person.
If it's safe. If you feel like it will be received.
Yeah.
Or there's an opportunity there, like don't miss the opportunity. And, because when you're in the situation with a big gathering, it will add a whole nother layer to it that probably you may not want.
And if you're going after it to conquer everything that you need to feel healed from, then that's not the thing. I mean, you can just layers, little chunks here.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm going to bring up this little thing here.
Yeah.
And I think that's what's been working for me is like small chunks because, I think most of my life I give everybody big ass chunks and it's hard to for them to digest and respond to me always.
Yeah.
Because it's overwhelming.
Yeah.
So.
No, I like that. One of the things I like about doing this podcast is to bring up things that like we're feeling into because we're pretty normal-ish. And so I know that's things that we're going through. It's probably something someone else is actually also experiencing. And I think one of the main points, like you were saying, is just really to spend some time becoming aware of what could be some of the things that are kind of bringing up more stress during this time, because it's happening statistically for many, many of us. Like, the percentage wise of like 33% are feeling more stress than they did last year.
Yeah.
So that was pretty high then too, is just to be aware, like, is this possible? How can I do some self-reflection and see what's here? Whether it's regarding family dynamics, conversations that you haven't had, whether it's how you have an underlying feeling about what the holidays bring up, even subconsciously, and how, the extra added stress is going to be there, and just give yourself some grace with it. It's just awareness, right? It's asking yourself the question rather than moving into this holiday season completely at like a million miles an hour. I mean, we went from, it's Thanksgiving already. We already have Christmas trees up. And then it's going to be like all this. Don't just move through that without even giving it a second thought and just being aware. Because once you become aware of it, then you might be able to choose a different response than what might normally happen.
Yeah.
So whether that was what we said, like journaling, expressive writing, meditation, just kind of going in and feeling into that and kind of mentally rehearsing.
Yep.
One of the things that I love that Dispenza talks about is like a mental rehearsal, right? How do you want it to go?
Yeah.
Or how do you feel? How could you show up and do a meditation about how you want the holidays to feel? Not what, things is it going to meet the mark on things in the dinner, but like, how do you want to feel going in? How do you see yourself responding?
Yeah.
Maybe to a difficult conversation that could come up, right? Or what are the things that you're bringing up that you realize are going to be stressors, and how would you like to respond in those ways? And imagine yourself doing
preparing
that.
for
Rehearsing your body into being able to manage some of these things that are coming up. Right?
Yeah.
So you're pre-gaming.
Yeah.
I want you to pre-game for the holidays. It's pre-game by mentally rehearsing the responses you would like to have. Not you need the dinner to be this way and how. No. That's expectation. Mentally rehearsing how you would like to respond to some of these stressors.
Yeah.
And really being aware that they could be here.
Yeah.
And, the other thing is really providing some time for self-care. So meaning don't just push yourself from one party to the next party to the next party. One, maybe you have to say no to something. And if you're going to multiple things, please schedule some time where you have some downtime.
Yeah.
You know, just maybe going on a hike or spending time with somebody who's not stressing you out.
Yeah.
You know, or just having some time where you have no obligation, so you can just reset.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's really important.
Oh man, that's such a big topic.
Breath work. Do some breath work.
Do some breath work. Yeah.
Do a 10, 20, 30 reset.
Well, it's good to be back from our little hiatus, and we're happy that you guys are all listening. So, maybe this stirred up something for you guys in the holidays, and you can take something with you into this next one.
Yeah. What are some things we didn't bring up that you're like, what about this? We want to know.
Yeah. Like and subscribe. Send us your comments, and we appreciate you.
Merry Shiftmas.
All right, that's been another episode of Let That Shift Go podcast. I'm Noel.
And I'm Lena. Let us know what your questions are, and we'd love to use them on a future episode. Or check us out on Insta at Let That Shift Go, or visit our website, serenitycovetemecula.com.